When are you going to kick the bucket?
I couldn't believe he would say something like that to his wife, who was told she would only live for another 6 months, even if his love for me had completely died. I was beyond angry and shocked, completely dumbfounded. What? The prognosis was for you.
What?
My name is Lily. Aging gracefully is an eternal theme for both men and women, I believe. I've turned 60, but I don't forget about style as a woman. It's not for my husband, Paul. When I look in the mirror and see that my hair, makeup, and outfit are all on point, it lifts my spirits. At work, people are surprised when I say I'm 60, and it makes me happy when they say I don't look it. The relationship with my husband has long gone cold, and every day I wonder why I married a man like him. I work full time in the editorial department of a comic magazine. Paul doesn't make much money, yet he's against me continuing to work. Seeing how Paul refuses to let go of his old fashioned thinking, I can only sigh. I find great fulfillment in advising young aspiring comic artists with big dreams and brainstorming compelling characters and interesting stories with them. Even at 60, I believe I can still work, and I plan to keep working as long as I can. But Paul feels differently.
How long do you plan on working? You're already 60.
I was irritated, but since Paul never backs down in an argument, I gave in.
If you neglect housework because of your job, I won't tolerate it.
Paul seriously believes housework is a wife's duty, and he probably doesn't even watch the news. It's not just that he thinks men are superior to women. He also loves younger, attractive women, which makes him, in some ways, the worst. I graduated from college and started my current job. When I was in high school, I dreamed of becoming a comic artist, but I gave up because I lacked artistic skill. That's why I want to support those chasing their dreams. I became so absorbed in my work that before I knew it, I was 40. A relative introduced me to a potential marriage partner, and I found myself dreaming of married life too. Marriage is a life changing decision, so you must never rush into it. However, I panicked, thinking if I missed this chance, I'd remain single for life. So I accepted the proposal and met Paul, who was 41, in an arranged meeting. At the time, Paul hid his true nature and acted like a kind gentleman, so I couldn't see through him. Since we were both over 40 and I had no intention of quitting my job, we don't have any children. My parents are in their 80s, but unlike Paul, they seem to be in tune with the times and never pressure me to give them grandchildren. There are plenty of women who want kids but can't have them. My parents know that saying things like, "We want to see our grandkids," or "When are you having kids?" creates unnecessary pressure. Lately, Paul has been spending a lot of time on his phone, secretly texting and making calls. I wondered if he might be cheating, but the fact that I don't feel any anger is probably proof that I'm completely over him. One day, Paul's mother, Mary, who lives nearby, came over to visit. Paul's father passed away 3 years ago, and now Mary lives alone. Mary is 85, but she's always firm and commanding, and even Paul can't stand up to her. It's not out of respect, it's because of her money.
Mom's such a miser. She's probably got around $200,000 saved up. I'm her only child, so I'll get it all. I wish she'd hurry up and kick the bucket.
I couldn't believe my ears. There are things you just don't say.
I need to act sweet, even if it's fake, or she might do something crazy like leave it all to a charity in her will.
At that moment, Mary appeared from the next room.
Sorry for being such a miser.
Mom,
Paul's face turned pale, and he lashed out at me with an angry glare.
you idiot. Why didn't you tell me she was here?
Shut up. Stop yelling all the time. You're bothering the neighbors.
It was such an unforgivable comment that Paul just looked down in silence, with no way to defend himself. While Paul was hiding in the bathroom, Mary asked me,
How long have things been bad between you two? It doesn't seem like just a phase, more like something serious.
"You can tell?" I gave a wry smile.
Lily, if you really can't take it anymore, divorce is always an option. You shouldn't have to stick around people who make you miserable. It's unbearable. Living with someone you dislike must be hard. Please don't make yourself feel like you have to stay because of me.
Mary's kindness touched my heart. She's so knowledgeable and cultured. It's hard to believe they're related by blood. Paul must have time traveled here from another era. This year, Paul had a health checkup at work, and it didn't go well. At 61, his unhealthy lifestyle has caught up with him. He's always coming home late and often stumbling and drunk. Paul says he's been drinking with colleagues at a bar, but I know he's been frequenting nightclubs. Never underestimate a wife's intuition. Paul went back to the hospital for a follow-up, but one day the hospital called.
Before we tell him, we'd like to speak with a family member.
I had a sinking feeling in my chest. When I heard the doctor's words at the hospital, I was stunned. 6 months left to live? Paul had been given a prognosis of 6 months, and I was hit by a whirlwind of emotions. I was surprised by my lack of shock. I felt a bit of pity and even started to feel a sense of relief. Then I scolded myself for being so heartless. A normal wife would be devastated hearing her husband had only 6 months left, so I found myself pretending to be more affected than I was. Could this be a mistake?
Unfortunately, you should prepare yourself. Whether or not to tell him depends on his personality, and since you know Paul best, Lily,
What do you mean by personality?
if he's the type to fall into despair and become reckless, it could be dangerous to tell him outright. If he's more of a cheerful and strong-willed person, it might be better to let him know.
If Paul hears he only has 6 months to live, he's bound to become reckless. But continuing to go to nightclubs and drink just because he doesn't have any symptoms isn't good either. I went home feeling down, but I decided I had to tell him. That night, when Paul got home, I said, "I need to talk to you about something important."
What's with the drama? I'm busy, unlike you.
"I'm busy too."
You're just making yourself busy. If you hate it, just quit your job. Honestly, it's embarrassing that I have a wife who works. It makes it seem like I don't earn enough.
I was taken aback by how outdated Paul's thinking was. Does he not know that most households these days have 2 working spouses, and stay-at-home wives are the minority? "I went to the hospital today."
The hospital?
Please, brace yourself for what I'm about to say.
Stop being so dramatic. I told you, I'm busy.
Frustrated, I blurted it out. "We've only got 6 months left." Paul stared at me for a few seconds. Then, for some reason, he laughed and quickly covered his mouth with his hand.
6 months left?
"Yes, please stay calm. Don't let it drive you to despair."
Idiot. Who's going to fall into despair? Don't flatter yourself and don't underestimate me.
Paul's words didn't make sense. It was obvious he was in shock.
Well, it was bound to happen, I guess. What with the terrible lifestyle and all.
I was surprised he was even aware of that. "That's why you should stop drinking so much."
Shut up. For a businessman, drinking is part of the job. Women always think it's just for fun. I'm not stopping.
"It's not a good idea. You should come straight home after work." Paul then grinned widely.
Hold on. You're not telling me you want to spend more time together now that I only have 6 months left, are you?
I hadn't even considered that, but I played the role of the good wife. Of course I do. I want more time, just the two of us.
Don't be stupid. I'm not some guy with time to kill.
Oh. Even though it was an important conversation, Paul cut me off.
All right, enough of this. We're done here. Time is money, and it's a waste spending it on useless chatter with you.
I couldn't believe he could say something so hurtful with such ease. But maybe it was just a defense mechanism, so I didn't push further. Worried that he might be feeling down, I peeked into Paul's study from the outside. I heard him talking, probably on the phone.
Ashley, I don't know if I call it good news, but Lily was told at the hospital today. She's got 6 months left. Didn't catch the name of the exact illness, but it's probably terminal cancer or something.
At first, I couldn't understand what Paul was saying.
Just gotta hang in there for 6 months. She's got life insurance, and my mom's 85, so she'll be gone soon too. Once Lily's out of the way, Ashley, let's move in together. I want to start over.
I was stunned. Paul had completely misunderstood. Listening to his conversation with this woman, Ashley, my anger reached a boiling point. I had no intention of correcting him. He had gone too far in mocking people. Even speaking about his own mother that way was unforgivable. In a voice so cold it even shocked me, I muttered, "Fine, go ahead and stay in your delusion, though it's only for 6 months." Since I told Paul about the prognosis, not only does he come home late, but there are now many nights when he doesn't come home at all. Sometimes he lies about being on a business trip, but he's really off on some trip for fun. It's staggering. Paul's style has become more flashy. He bought an expensive watch and seems to be living it up every day. He's also buying lots of gifts. Paul doesn't have that kind of money. He's probably counting on my life insurance payout after I die. He's absolutely pathetic. It's been 3 months since the diagnosis. Seeing Paul looking pale, I asked, "Are you feeling unwell?"
I've been feeling sluggish and tired lately. I get out of breath just walking up the stairs at the station. Yes, I'm getting old.
You should really cut back on drinking.
Shut up. I told you, drinking is part of work. If all you can do is bring me down, why don't you just drop dead already?
I was furious, but I didn't respond on purpose.
Nagging women are the worst. You and that old hag can just drop dead already.
Right behind Paul was Mary.
Old hag, were you talking about me?
Oh, you scared me.
Paul shot me a furious look, but Mary asked again.
Old hag, were you talking about me?
No way. I've never called you that, Mom. I was talking about a horrible boss at work.
I see.
Mary looked at him suspiciously, and Paul couldn't meet her gaze, looking down instead. Paul looked like he wanted to yell at me for not telling him Mary was there, but instead, he walked off somewhere. It's been 4 months since the prognosis. Paul has started coughing more often. He's been taking more time off work. And although he used to have high blood pressure, now it's low. He gets dizzy from the low blood pressure, and once he almost fell down the stairs. Yet he still goes on these so-called business trips, which is ridiculous. It's clear he's choosing to spend his remaining time with his mistress, not his wife. The fact that he's living it up with his mistress, while I'm the one with just a few months left, makes it impossible for me to feel any sympathy for him. Paul complains about feeling cold in his hands and feet, even on warm days. and says he's in pain all over. If you're not feeling well, maybe you should decline the business trips.
Don't interfere with my work. These trips are the only. They're crucial jobs that only I can do.
Should I call your office and ask your boss to excuse you from these trips? As expected, Paul's face turned red and he shouted.
Don't you dare. I'll never forgive you if you do that.
I held back a laugh. All I felt for Paul now was pity, but I wasn't sure whether or not I should tell Mary the truth. She's been kind to me ever since we first got married. Just then, there was an unexpected visitor. It was a young woman I'd never seen before. Who are you?
My name is Ashley. Nice to meet you.
Ashley? Could this be Paul's mistress? I couldn't believe she had the nerve to come to my house, and I instinctively braced myself for confrontation.
Let me get straight to the point. Please set Paul free.
Set him free? As we talked, I was honestly shocked. Even as a woman, I had to admit Ashley was stunning, beautiful, graceful, great figure, and impeccable fashion sense. I couldn't, for the life of me, understand why someone like her would be with Paul. He's not rich, so it's not for money. But pure love? No way. Is this some kind of scam?
Paul is suffering. I believe it's due to stress, so could you divorce him?
Despite her boldness, I replied with a smirk. What you're doing is illegal, you know. Talking to a wife like this is pretty outrageous, don't you think? But she wasn't fazed at all.
Sometimes you meet your soulmate after you're already married. It's foolish to be bound by the institution of marriage when that happens. You only live once.
I realized something. If I kept talking to her, I might lose my cool and do something rash, so I ended the conversation with a smile. Paul's already been set free by heaven. Whether he goes to heaven or hell, well, that's not for me to decide. For a moment, she looked confused, but then she laughed brightly.
Heaven? Lily, you're funny.
I'm not trying to be funny. By the way, how old are you?
I'm 29.
29. She's in her 20s. I felt dizzy. The fact that she was more than 30 years younger than Paul was mind-blowing. If you don't mind me asking, what do you do for work?
He came to the place where I work to see me. He's incredibly kind and such a good person.
You're honestly involved with Paul out of pure feelings?
Of course. Paul is such a tough guy and he's really good.
Stop. I glared at her with a smile. If you say one more word, I swear I'll strangle you. Ashley laughed at my remark. I'm not joking. Ashley stared at me in silence for a few seconds before speaking.
Meeting you for the first time today, I'm honestly surprised because you're so different from what I expected.
Did Paul say things about me? Ashley laughed.
He didn't say anything bad. I just didn't expect you to be such a wonderful person.
I wasn't about to feel flattered by a compliment from my husband's mistress, but I was starting to sense that Ashley wasn't a bad person. I refused to let myself like her out of principle, but with someone as charming and kind as her, it's no wonder Paul, who's got a thing for younger women, fell so easily. True love. Well, soon enough, you'll find out if what you're feeling is real.
What?
Even her puzzled expression was cute. I had no lingering feelings for Paul, who had fallen for this little temptress, but I did feel a small pang of something like pity for Ashley. 6 months had passed since I received the prognosis. Paul, looking pale, stayed home from work again today. When he saw me come home from work looking healthy, a sneer crossed his face.
When are you going to kick the bucket?
I couldn't believe he would say something like that to a wife who had supposedly been given just 6 months to live, even if his love for me had completely died. I held back my anger and stayed calm.
You and my mom. It's like the saying goes, ill weeds grow apace. You two are tough to kill.
You can say what you want about me, but don't speak badly of Mary. Suddenly, Paul exploded in anger.
Don't you dare tell me what to do. I see. You think you can get away with anything now that your time's running out. Fine. Before you drop dead, let me tell you the truth. Marrying you was the biggest mistake of my life.
The final words that should never be spoken. Paul had finally crossed the line. In a burst of anger that felt like flames shooting through the ceiling, I blurted out, "Is that your last will and testament?"
My will? Wait a second. You haven't written some weird will, have you?
Did you write one? It's been 6 months since your prognosis.
What nonsense are you talking about? The prognosis was for you. Have you finally lost it?
I was beyond anger and shock, completely dumbfounded. What? The prognosis was for you.
What?
Paul's face froze for a moment, but then he sneered.
You really need to be checked into a hospital. You're making no sense. Go today.
With that, Paul stormed off into his study. The next morning, Paul collapsed at home. I immediately called an ambulance, contacted Mary, and headed to the hospital. After the tests were done and Paul learned the truth, he was furious, shouting at me even in front of the doctor and nurses.
Why didn't you tell me something so important?
I told you 6 months ago.
Don't lie. You were the one with the prognosis.
As if recalling our conversation from 6 months ago, Paul stood there stunned. I had never said who the prognosis was for.
I see. You let me believe it was you. You're a devil.
This is a hospital. Please calm down.
Stay out of this. Are you in on this too?
He pointed at the doctor and nurses, becoming hostile. It was utter chaos, and Paul was practically losing his mind.
I'm not staying here. If I get admitted to a hospital that pulls tricks like this, they'll kill me.
That's going too far.
Shut up. How can I trust any of you?
He brushed off the nurses trying to stop him and ran out of the hospital room. I had no intention of stopping him. Instead, I apologized to the doctor and nurses for Paul's rudeness and then headed home. A few days later, Paul came home, his face pale. Apparently, when he told Ashley the truth, she broke up with him. I wasn't surprised. It was bound to happen. As I pictured Ashley's face, I realized it could have been worse. Not only had she dumped him, but it turned out Ashley was married. It's not uncommon for women in her line of work to lie about being single, even when they're not. Ashley's husband had been in prison and was recently released. When he found out about her affair, he confronted her, and she spilled everything about Paul.
Help me. He's threatening to throw me into the ocean alive.
How am I supposed to help you against someone like that?
How can you stay so calm when your husband's life is in danger?
Where does he get the nerve to say that? Why don't you run off overseas?
I don't have the money.
Apparently, Paul had spent all their savings, counting on the life insurance payout he thought would come in 6 months. All those business trips he took, actually vacations with Ashley, had drained the money. It's no wonder the cast disappeared so quickly.
Please, can't you lend me some money?
I don't have any, I replied coldly.
Then ask Mom for a loan. She won't give me a dime, that stingy old hag.
What old hag?
Paul looked like a character out of a comic strip, completely panicking and glaring at me.
I keep telling you, warn me when she's here. Are you doing this on purpose?
Well, you've only got 6 months to live or wait. That was 6 months ago, so I guess your time's about up.
Even I was shocked at how cold my words sounded, but Paul stood there in disbelief at what Mary had said.
How could you say that to your own son?
How many times have you said something like that about your own mother?
With that blow, Paul had no comeback.
Paul, apologize to Lily from the bottom of your heart. Then we can talk.
Paul, unable to swallow his pride, yelled,
This is my house. Get out. I don't want to see your face anymore.
Lily, let's go.
"What?"
Paul, I'm done with you. I'm cutting ties with you as my son. I'll live with my daughter from now on.
Daughter?
Paul had no siblings, so I was shocked, wondering if there was a secret child. Then Mary said,
Lily is my daughter. Do you have a problem with that?
"Mary." Paul was wide-eyed and surprised at her words. I was on the verge of tears, but I held them back. Mary and Paul were blood related. But if Paul and I divorced, Mary and I would no longer be family. And yet, Mary called me her daughter. I felt it from the moment I married Paul. Mary had always treated me like her own. That love was genuine. Paul, pale, glared at Mary.
What are you talking about? I'm your real son, and she's your daughter-in-law. Isn't it obvious who matters more?
Of course it's obvious, and without hesitation, I choose my real daughter, Lily. A man who cheats and brazenly defends it is no son of mine.
Mary's firm words left no room for doubt, and Paul, silent, walked like a ghost into his study. I quickly packed my things and moved in with Mary. Fortunately, I had my job, and as Paul often said, Mary had savings. With Mary's advice, I finalized my divorce and cut all ties with Paul. I wonder if Paul's all right, though it's his own fault. I catch myself thinking cold thoughts, like whether the thugs or death will come for him first. Oddly enough, I'm more worried about Ashley. I'm still not sure if this was the right decision. Marriage is, after all, two strangers living together, and the most important thing is love. Once that love fades, things fall apart quickly. But was this marriage a mistake? I don't think so. I met Mary, and that alone made it worth it. Even now, we live happily together, like a real mother and daughter. My parents were initially shocked, but after hearing about the chaotic 6 months, they understood right away. Now, I'm happy. Happiness isn't something others give you. It's something you claim for yourself. When men say to their fiancé's parents, "I'll make her happy," it's not really up to them to provide that happiness. Happiness comes from within. Inside each of us lies the potential for infinite possibilities. I believe in my own strength, and I'll keep living with that belief.